Hello, this is Francis. I'm the director of Catching Fire.
And Nina Jacobson, the producer.
Here we have the opening of the movie that we shot. We did a special 2 days of shooting for this stuff here in the opening, where we spent 2 days in New Jersey. We never quite got winter in Atlanta, where we spent the majority of our shoot. And we wanted a real change and sense of real visual change with District 12. It kind of matches the changes with Katniss. And we got really, really cold weather. It was about 9 degrees, I think, when we shot.
Oh, whoa. Easy.
It was freezing, and both Jen and I were sick, I think, both just getting over the flu. So it was kind of a miserable couple of days.
We'd already wrapped the rest of the movie. We had been in Hawaii, and before that we'd been in Atlanta. So we were reunited in New Jersey on some of the coldest days of the year. And it was really hard work because the weather was such a factor.
Well, let's go.
We were in Jersey in the Ramapo Mountains shooting next to this frozen lake. And we had to sort of cut around some of the sounds of, I'd never heard the sounds of ice actually sort of moving and sort of shifting on the lake. It was pretty intense. And this is this sequence here, the opening and the hunting with Gale in the woods, is not actually a direct pull from the book, but sort of an implied pull from the book, where Katniss here is trying to sort of resume somewhat of a normal life for her in District 12, but because she's been in the games, things are different. So even something that she's so good at, like hunting, now kind of takes on a nightmarish quality.
We brought Jack Quaid back, who obviously we killed him in the last movie. So he showed up in New Jersey to make a command performance.
Luckily, I think he goes to school in Manhattan, so it was a close commute. But poor guy had to stand around all day in these horrible temperatures to, die a miserable death.
This was something, the PTSD and trying to capture the terror that Katniss feels coming back from a war zone and trying to resume life. It was something that was always really important to Suzanne Collins, that we talked about a lot in the script, and that these books are a soldier's story. And we wanted to make sure that we were able to capture that you can't just go back to life as usual, that the experiences of the games have stayed with her.
Yeah, and that's something that we like to we tried to carry through with a bunch of the characters, and especially anybody that's been a victor that's made it through the games, is to start to get a sense of how they've changed because of the games. Another one of the things that we tried to do that you can see this walk through District 12 is add a larger sense of kind of place and geography with District 12, since more is starting to happen within it. So we get a little bit more of a sense of the coal mining, the infrastructure there, and some of the machinery that the Capitol might have put into District 12. And now the big kiss. Gale's first kiss. This is actually moved from the book. We did it in this sort of hidden alley, kind of out of the view of everybody here. And I think in the book it's sort of out by the fence line coming back from hunting. So a similar idea, but I think takes place in a flashback in the book, actually, in the first chapter.
This was a big decision.
Yes, it was.
We recast Buttercup so that she looked like the cat as described in the book. The first time we had a black and white cat, this was a big controversial decision, which was, let's just get a cat in there for the rest of the movies who looks more like the Buttercup of the book.
And the Buttercup that the fans wanted. So we got this kind of great, tough-looking cat from one of the Atlanta animal trainers, and the cat did a pretty good job, I have to say. And now Deb, our casting director, won't be getting death threats for having supposedly cast the wrong cat.
If you wanted to be babied.
And there's another sort of little glimpse of some PTSD with Hamish there, the sort of waking up and swinging the knife and holding on to the knife while you sleep, and the drinking. We start to get a sense that some of this is also from his history with the games and what he's seen and what he's experienced.
Another thing you can see in this section of the movie is that because it's winter, it created a lot of opportunities for Trish Somerville, our costume designer, to modify the looks of the characters and to create a new look for this film, which is consistent with the first, but also branches out. So Katniss is wearing this sweater. It's a very different time of year, and the look is very different for all the characters.
Yeah, and a lot of the characters now are victors, and so what they wear, they have a different opportunity for clothing now. And I think, as you can see, she's still wearing her hunting jacket, her father's hunting jacket, that she still goes back to some familiar favorites, but that there's a new closet of clothes to pull from for her. And now we have the iconic Snow visits Katniss scene that really kicks our movie into gear.
My dear, I think we can make this so much simpler if we agree not to lie to each other.
What was remarkable here was that this was always an incredibly long scene, and no matter how many cracks we took on the script, it just had to be a very long scene. There's a lot of critical information about the past and the threat to Katniss, and this is really the inciting incident for this movie. And Donald and Jen are both so good in this scene that it was incredible how quickly the scene really flew by, even though it is an unusually long dialogue scene for a movie like this, at this section particularly.
Yeah, but they're so good at it and so sort of locked into one another. And I think the relationship is so charged. I think it really works. But yeah, it really did vary. I mean, I think at one point we had the scene down to about 2 pages or so, and up to as many as 8. And we landed somewhere in the middle with some nice pieces, quite honestly, on the cutting room floor. There's a version of the scene where we actually started to hint at the sores in Snow's mouth, where he actually dabbed his mouth and left a little blood stain on a handkerchief. And maybe later in the scene, if you sort of glimpse down on the desk toward the end of the scene, you might see his handkerchief sitting there at a certain point. We also started to lay in Snow outside as a foreshadowing to his character's entrance, so that when she and Gale are hunting, it's not snowing. But when they start to make their way home, we started the snow falling, and then it stops as soon as snow goes away.
You can also see we changed Donald's look a little bit. He's more groomed, more presidential. He too is wearing the furs, sort of decadent version of Capitol winter wear, but he also has had to sort of step up his game as the threat that Katniss poses to the order in Panem. He's become more presidential, more intimidating, more sort of statesman-like. And so we changed his look a bit to reflect that.
Yeah, you can also see some of the sort of lines, I guess, of the silhouette of what he's wearing are also a bit more fascist than they were before, of the suit underneath the fur.
Why don't you just kill me now?
I don't want to kill you.
We also introduce here, I think, an idea that is reflected throughout the script, which is the idea of allies, enemies, friends, and Katniss spends most of this movie trying to figure out who is what in that list. But in this scene, Snow proposes that they become allies.
Yeah, it's really down to the last few moments of this movie, and really down to the climax of the film, she's really trying to figure out who her enemies and her allies are. Probably the biggest theme of this film. Now we bring in Miss Effie Trinket. Elizabeth was such a blast on this. Just did such a fantastic job, and we really worked together with her to start to bring a different level of humanity to her character, and that she's had success for the first time and has really connected to these two tributes that have become victors, and so it's not only their success but her success, and when that starts to be taken away, I think she really feels that. Here you can also see some of Trish Somerville's new costume designs. She had an amazing time pulling and creating things for Effie here. There was a lot of Alexander McQueen sort of museum pieces and things that she pulled in. I think this is one of them, one of these laser cut sort of snowflake dresses that she had Effie wear for the winter, the beginning of the Victory Tour.
Welcome.
And this was fun too, sort of starting to create some of the places where Caesar would exist, and imagining that, he has, a nightly or weekly show in the Capitol, and that he has his own sort of Entertainment Tonight-like set where he, holds interviews and does stories. And so it was fun working with Phil Messina, the production designer, designing some of those environments.
You can see here that Cinna has zeroed in on the fact that Katniss doesn't seem quite as sturdy as she's trying to present an image of to everybody. But it's showtime, and Effie has no questions about it at all. She's just excited to put on the show she's been waiting to resume ever since they became a sensation last year.
And these robotic cameras were something that we actually added in the script phase. I thought it would be really interesting that, to not really have a camera crew there, but to sort of just have this kind of echoing voice of Caesar booming over these loudspeakers echoing through Victor's Village, and it's kind of cold and bleak where they are, and these robotic cameras sort of probing up, coming right up to their faces, trying to get a close look. Seems to add to their alienation.
That's it? That's all we get? We're good? So taciturn all of a sudden. Peter, give me some details.
This was a bit of a cheat too from the book. I think one of the things here is there's the fall that happens earlier right before they kiss, which I think was prompted because of Peeta's bad leg from the books. And here we had to sort of play around with them just slipping on a little ice, or her pulling him down just so she can kind of fabricate this kiss, so she can start to play the part.
I think they're both so good in this scene. You just feel how excruciatingly awkward it is and how much they need to break the ice. It's also great to check out some of the food in this section. We had amazing food designers, chocolate designers, and Phil Messina and his team, I think, really did an extraordinary job of creating the decadence and excess that the victors are now entitled to.
Yeah, and what I like about this too is that we sort of go through some sort of similar situations from the last movie, but things are so different this time. That this time on the train, instead of the wonder of the opulence and the food, they're much more about the relationships and the mission that she's been given by Snow. This is a new extension of the train that Phil designed, which I think is pretty amazing, the observation car. This became a scene that was very important in the progression of the Katniss and Peeta relationship. Since the last games, they've started to drift apart and haven't spent as much time together, and she's been drifting closer to Gale, but now she's been given this kind of mission to go out and show the country that she and Peeta are truly in love, and this kind of handshake deal that Peeta makes with her to be friends, and I think is a nice scene.
You can see, though, she still wants to keep him at bay. It's hard for her to trust him. She's kept him at a distance. And one of the things I really enjoy about this section of the movie is watching her get to know him all over again throughout the victory tour, as she is reminded of the man that he is. And Gale's made a lot of headway with her. You can feel that he's become a real romantic rival. He's made his intentions known with that kiss. He's made it clear that he wants to be taken seriously. I love the way this sequence of scenes coming up, she starts to be reminded of who Peeta is and why she started to have feelings for him even in the midst of the artifice.
And now we get our first glimpse of one of the other districts, the big wall that's being built. Make sure people stay in.
And also a great first piece of graffiti. It was a lot of fun for Phil and his team to create the graffiti of resistance.
Part of the fun for me doing this film was getting to expand the world and getting to see a lot more of the world of Panem, and getting to see more of District 11, and we see some of District 8 and some of 6 and some of 3, in a brand new arena. So that was fun stuff to dive in with Phil, the designer, and start to work on these places. And, Suzanne had created such an amazing map of where all these different districts exist and what they all do. And so there was a lot of great material to work from.
We also took advantage of the increased level of tension in Panem to step up the look and feel of how intimidating the peacekeepers are. And so while they're still in the white as they were in the first movie, now they're wearing the helmets, they're more armored. They've clearly stepped up to a even more militaristic presence.
Yeah, we started to call them the elite peacekeepers. We do a bit of a transition. So if you look closely where the Capitol has sent in new peacekeepers when things have gotten out of control, that's when these guys come in. So there's some times in 12 where you see some of the older peacekeepers still around until the new elite ones come in. This was always one of my favorite sequences. It was a fun one to shoot and kind of just felt like it started to work right out of the bag in rehearsals. It was a really fun one and really intense and really emotional. The speech for Rue and the shooting of the old man from District 11.
For Katniss, we know that without Rue and without Thresh, we wouldn't be standing here today.
This is also another sort of key moment in Katniss and Peeta's relationship. It's one of the stepping stones. If you sort of track the two of them getting closer together, I think she really gets a sense of how eloquent he is, and a sense of the peace that he pushes with his speech here.
Stick to the cards.
Thank you.
So it was also a very challenging scene to shoot because we had trains passing by. And so here there was incredibly emotional dialogue that has to be delivered, but we kept having to stop because Atlanta is a train town, and this was a very busy spot where we had a lot of train traffic.
Yeah, we actually had I don't think we had a location where there wasn't a train or an airplane or something passing very close by, causing major sound problems. This was a tricky movie in general for sound, especially getting into the IMAX footage later. Those cameras are really loud, so felt bad. Jen especially, I think, had a lot of ADR to do on this.
I hear her in a Mockingjay song.
Our extras casting, I think, did a fantastic job of finding Rue's family members, really very convincing version of what Rue's family might look like.
Yeah, and great faces in the crowd as well. I mean, I think our casting director found the great, the old man who's out in the crowd there that gets shot. And there he is, amazing face. But great faces around him, just really populated these different districts with amazing people. So really fun people to shoot. Really talented people too. These are the new peacekeepers coming in. We did have a little back and forth with this is one of the moments with the MPAA where we had to do a little trimming here on the gunshot, where we just had to sort of scudge the door a little more closed right there than we had originally. I think it's only by about 2 frames or so, but it made the difference.
Also, you might notice, if you remember the Rue sequences from the first movie, that we've reprised her theme here in the score by James Newton Howard. He wrote a beautiful theme around her death, and we reprise it in the sequences. District 11 rises up again.
He's worried about rebellion in the district. He thinks that they don't believe our love story.
This is actually a change from the book. I mean, the scene sort of takes place in the same area where, Hamish sort of pulls the microphones off and runs them up some stairs and finds a quiet place and a kind of an attic. I think it's written in a dome in the book, and we brought them up into this space above the Justice Building. But the content of the scene has changed a little bit. And this is where he really gives them their mission, and that it's not just for the trip, that it's going to be for a lifetime.
That means that every year they're going to drag you out and broadcast the...
Just as Katniss has told Gale at the beginning of the movie, it's only a few weeks, she's not realizing that it's not only a few weeks, that this is a lifetime job that she now has as a victor. What Hamish has lived with himself all his life, ever since he won his games, he's introducing to them now the fact that this job will never end.
Come here. You're going to be okay. I promise.
And this sequence here took a while to really kind of hone down. I think in the book it takes, it covers more ground, or at least more pages. And we really wanted to sort of distill this victory tour into its most efficient form, to sell the idea that they're out there sort of selling their love and that people really aren't buying it, and this kind of escalating tension as they go from district to district with people not buying it and sort of pushing Katniss to speak her mind. It was a fun challenge, and again, also fun to see a little bit more of the world. I really enjoyed that moment. I think that'd be very hard for Katniss to keep quiet as 2 people are dragged off.
You can see each of the districts, has different style of, what they build and what they do and how they dress. You start to get a feel for these regions of the country.
Yeah, Trish did a great job with that. There was it was some tricky stuff where you're kind of in and out of these districts with massive amounts of extras. Where we might only spend a day or half a day shooting extras in District 4, and she had to find how to specifically get this sort of oceanside fishing district to look very specific, and the textile district in 8 to look specific, and I think just did a really great job.
And when we would do these districts, we would also try to film what we thought would be the television coverage of the victors being reaped in those districts while we had people on that location in that wardrobe.
Yeah, we did a lot of swapping and faking of sort of Justice Building steps and using banners and things so we could really get more mileage out of what we had already built. And I love the scene. A lot of these snow scenes are new, because the books stay so within Katniss's point of view, to sort of go into Snow's world a little bit and to reveal a granddaughter and to reveal the fact that she now wears her hair like Katniss. I get such a kick out of that. And I love, too, that they're, Katniss and Peeta are in these kind of miserable, districts giving speeches to rioting crowds and Snow's eating fish for breakfast in a sunroom with birds chirping and the sun streaming in. Now we're leading up to one of the big sequences of our movie, which was the victory tour party in the Capitol. For a while, we went back and forth for a long time on where this party would be, and then finally, the production designer and I kind of landed on the idea of it being at Snow Mansion, which seems to be a no-brainer, and it really worked out perfectly. So it was fun to design this party, and fun to design the sort of entrance to the house that'll become key in the next movies and in Mockingjay.
This is also one of the funniest moments on when we were making the movie, because when Josh knelt on one knee to propose to Jen, his pants ripped right in the middle of the proposal.
That's right.
It was a big laugh on set.
That's right. But there we go, the entrance. So from the square, which will be, there's a big scene that takes place in Mockingjay right outside of the house here. But it was really fun to sort of, build this palace with fountains and create this party. And we shot this at a place called the Swan House, which is a historic residence in Atlanta where we shot the film. And it was sort of a perfect find because architecturally it just really fit a lot of what we had put into the Capitol and a lot of what we thought, Snow would like and would create for himself. Now we get some good glimpses as well of the Capitol elite who have come to the party. And once again, Trish and her team and the hair and makeup group did an amazing job. If you notice the house too, we also did some 3D projection onto the house where we'd actually sort of built the house in the computer and created projection to go on the architecture specifically. So this kind of fun animation and color added to the house as well.
I think there's just some extraordinary design work in the sequence, from the wardrobe, the set, the food. Again, this food was just unbelievable. But when you look at how each extra has a distinct look, and how Effie here is just, this is everything she's ever wished for. And it's going to be pretty much all downhill for her from here as she starts to realize that it's not all that it cracked up to be. But in this place, Effie is in her, she's in ecstasy. This is all she's ever aspired.
Oh yeah, it's all perfect so far. And the dance. Now we're about to meet Plutarch Heavensby for the first time with our new cast members, Philip Seymour Hoffman. Just did an amazing job in this movie, and so lucky to have him. For fans of the book, this is a big key moment. I mean, we've invented with Suzanne's a few more scenes with Plutarch that we cut away to throughout the film because he's a big key character. But few key things here. One that he volunteered for this job, not unlike on Katniss, to take over as a head game maker for this special year in the Court of Quell, and this kind of odd interest he has in her. But there's one element that fans of the book will notice we left out at the end of the sequence, which is in the book he used to flash a pocket watch to Katniss, and on the pocket watch on the face was a hologram of a Mockingjay. And we shot it, and it was really useful in the book and really interesting because Katniss could sort of debate it in her mind about whether or not he was messing with her or he wanted to show her something, and she couldn't sort of quite figure it out. But it didn't quite work in the same way when you actually see it because we couldn't hear her thought processes. So we decided to pull it out.
We didn't want to take any chances of people who hadn't read the book guessing where Plutarch's character would go. And we felt it might be too big of a giveaway and too great of a risk that we might lose one of the great surprises of the book. Katniss does a good job of concealing that from us in the book because she debates it in a way that we don't really give it much credence as a clue.
So another key moment from the story here, where Snow gives his speech and sets off the fireworks and then shakes his head, letting Katniss know that what she's been trying to do hasn't worked. But one of my favorite moments here is a very small thing that doesn't really even pay off until the Mockingjay stories, but it's the little drop of blood that sort of lands in his glass of champagne when he toasts them.
It's always the recurring motif of Snow and his white roses, too, which will also pay off in Mockingjay.
Such a great, subtle response there from Jen. I love that performance. It's just the smallest thing, covering everything up.
Also, just really, I like the choices here of the old and the new, the timelessness of the waltz and of this swan house that we used, and all of the new technology of the 3D mapping, the fireworks. I think some really interesting choices were made there.
Yeah. And now the scene that kind of really kicks us into our second act of the story, where Katniss sees the beginning of the rioting and sees that what she's done really hasn't worked and sees why Snow shook his head at her. I should say, too, I love the way this train car looks at night. And, Yo Willems, cinematographer, just did an amazing job with color and light and scope, and just did an amazing job, I think. And now we get our first Donald Sutherland, Philip Seymour Hoffman scene. Now these scenes probably took the most development of anything when we were working on the script, because they were really, for the most part, the kind of the scenes that we invented completely from scratch. And we had the guidelines of sort of what was happening around them and what the repercussions of these scenes might be, but we had to sort of back engineer what the scenes actually were. So to sort of figure out what the life of Snow would be in terms of where he would be, where these scenes would happen, figuring out the relationship between Snow and Plutarch, and why his relationship is different with Plutarch than it is with, or was with Seneca Crane, was a really interesting and fun challenge, and really sort of developed right up until the day we started to shoot the scenes.
Well, these scenes were so critical for us because this is actually a story in which the villain is driving a lot of the momentum of the story. Katniss is being used for a lot of different purposes, and she will eventually sort of take control of her actions. But here we needed to make sure that we understood why the villains are making the choices that they're making, and yet create a logic for Plutarch that would hold up at the end of the story when you looked back and still have credibility.
Yeah, there's certain points in this movie where there's these big sort of pivot turns where things, sort of the stakes and things change and go in a completely different direction. As we're about to see, now there's a crackdown on 12 that she knows she's failed. She wants to run away, and now there's a crackdown on 12 and everything changes. And it's because of what they've done. And so it was key to track them through the story.
This is also a place where we cut out a big chunk of the book. In the book, she's preparing for her wedding during this whole sequence, and it takes a while for to get to the whipping. There's a whole sort of piece of the story that we felt didn't propel her enough. And Suzanne Collins, who we collaborated closely with, was one of the most aggressive people in the mix about accelerating this section of the story and making the trims so that we could propel her into taking on the banner of this resistance and joining it instead of running from it.
Yeah, and this scene was sort of key, I think, in kind of reorganizing and sort of realigning the audience with what Katniss's motor is going to be through this section of the movie. So her coming home, knowing that she's failed and seeing the rioting and Snow shaking his head at her, and suddenly she comes back and says, we have to get out of here, we have to run, they're going to kill us, was key to sort of reorienting ourselves with her after the victory tour.
She's just not ready to be the hero yet. But Gale, you start to see his radicalization. He is identifying with this resistance. He wants to fight. He doesn't want to run. He won't let her run. And I think it's a great sequence between them where he won't let her run away. And he keeps her honest and reminds her of what power she has. No matter how much he loves her, his desire to fight the system is greater and will become even greater through Mockingjay and really consume him.
Nice visual effect work here. Some small, just sort of background extensions in terms of opening up 12, sort of seeing out the corners and the hillsides and the coal mining structures and infrastructure of the place. I thought was really nice here. Yannick Surs, our visual effects supervisor, I think really did an amazing job. This, of course, is attempting to shoot winter in District 12 in late summer in Atlanta. So it was actually quite warm where we're trying to make it, sort of cold and bleak, and our practical effects guys, is trying to spread snow everywhere, and it was a lot of work. And of course, that's one of the reasons we went to New Jersey for the opening, was that we never quite had real winter in Atlanta and never lost the leaves off of the trees. So we had to do a lot of visual effects work to sort of create bare trees in the background and pull leaves off trees or pull color and green out and desaturate and give Atlanta a more wintry look.
This is the only really good look you'll ever get at the Hob. We shot it in both movies, and in both movies it ends up just the story is moving so quickly during the sections that the Hob is in that you never really get that great of a look at it. The closest look you ever really get to see the extent of the black market is when it's being burnt down.
Yeah, there was actually it was a beautiful set that the guys put together. And there was a quick scene early on before Gale and Katniss kiss in the beginning of the movie where we followed them into the Hob and watched Gale sort of trade some of his game, and Katniss was buying some moonshine for the white liquor that she brings to Haymitch.
This is obviously a really key scene from the book, something that is a huge turning point for Katniss and for Gale.
Yeah. This was a fun scene to shoot. I mean, it was a little tricky for Liam. We were using a felt whip here, but I think we shot for about 2 or 3 days, and he had these prosthetics on his back. But even though it didn't hurt to get whipped by this whip here, this prop whip, after 3 days of it, it actually did start to hurt, and he started to get some welts and things, and I felt bad, but it looks pretty convincing.
You don't want to shoot her.
How about I shoot both of you?
Look, Commander, you're new here. Trust me, I'm trying.
In this moment here, it's interesting if you sort of start to think about Plutarch's plan, and that was one of the tricky things about kind of tracking him as a character and tracking what his objectives are, because you could sort of look at the scene that's about to come up where Snow and Plutarch are looking at the screen and they see an image of this and of Katniss trying to stop the whipping, and how that's spread and people have seen it because of Plutarch's plan to broadcast whippings nationally. But, there's no way he could have known that she would sort of step in and intervene in any way. I mean, he might have had his hopes, but there's no way he could have known. So the truth is that, early on, Plutarch has kind of many options and many objectives. One is that he just hopes that he can kind of keep her safe, but she could be just as useful to him dead as a martyr.
It's the firing squad. Excellent idea. I don't care who she is. Clear the square! You're all under...
Woody's a big ad-libber. I'm pretty sure that this scene is got a couple of Woody ad-libs in it. He's often would come up with lines on the spot that were really right on character, but also pretty funny.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to say, I really enjoyed any time we could add some levity. I mean, this is a perfect example. I think we might have shot this in our second week of production, and I think it was our first scene with Woody, or at least my first scene with Woody. And he came up with this sort of genius little moment that I love here. So you have wounded Gale being brought onto the table and people pouring the alcohol on his back to sterilize the wounds. And of course, what's the first thing Woody sees is he sees the bottle of booze and goes to drink it, which is nice, which is, right on character.
We also wanted to start to tell the story of Prim growing up, becoming a healer. We don't have that much time with her, and yet she's so important in this series. And this was just a really nice moment of her sort of stepping up and Katniss seeing her sister growing up and becoming, a healer in her own right. It's also great work from V. Neal and her team on these prosthetics and on the makeup here.
I like this stretch of the movie a lot. These few scenes here, starting with this quiet moment with Katniss and Gale, and then leading into the next morning when she's spent the night sitting by Gale's side, and Petey comes in and offers to watch him for a while. I think it just sort of so perfectly sets up the dynamic between the three of them.
I'm gonna stay right here. Cause all kinds of trouble.
This is all on stage, but I think the lighting here is so beautiful, so warm. You really feel like you're there in her home and that you're part of this very intimate moment.
Yeah, Yo did a great job with that, of sort of capturing the warmth of fires, or the chill of a cold winter morning, and just, he's really good with color.
If you want to get some rest, I can look after him for a while.
I don't get him more snow.
I find this whole sequence very poignant. You really feel his heart is breaking.
And this next scene is actually something that was also added, that was invented, not in the book. And it's important because of what Katniss is about to go off and do, and that there's going to be some irreverence, and she's going to say and do some things that won't necessarily be pleasing to Snow and to the Capitol, and to sort of get permission from Prim and from her mother through Prim that it's okay that they back her in whatever she wants to do and they believe in her, was an important idea for the movie.
Yeah, that they want to fight in their own way, and that they're willing to take the risks, accept the risks that go with that. Also, Willow's, she's exactly the age of Prim, and we're just watching her grow up before our eyes. She's much taller in this movie, and she's just growing up so fast, and I think she does a really beautiful job in this scene with Jen.
Yeah, we just saw her at Comic-Con, and she's about a foot taller than she was when we shot.
I love you too.
The broadcast cut out here.
And this is the second of our Plutarch and Snow scenes. And there's this was also a much longer scene, and there was a big long speech that we had that Snow started to talk about the Jabberjays and the creation of a mutt and how it got out of control, and starting to relate them to Katniss.
Her entire species has to be eliminated.
Her species, sir.
The other victors. Now, because of her, they all pose.
This was actually an invention from Michael Arndt that I think was really, really amazing, and helped kind of tie everything together so that, you know, at this point in the movie where Snow decides that it's not just Katniss that's the problem, that it's all the victors. So when they decide here to change the rules for the Quarter Quell announcement, it really makes sense in a much bigger way, which is really nice.
We also shot early on in our shoot. We shot a whole sequence of Plutarch going into sort of the bowels of the Capitol where all of the records are kept, and taking the cards for on which the Quarter Quells are announced and changing it to make this plan. And we thought for sure we would use it during this speech and that we would cut to it, but we ended up just caring about the people more than the process, and their faces told the whole story.
And with the Quarter Quell, you know, it offered us some freedom to, you know, redesign a little and create a new tribute quarters and create new sort of add some scope to the avenue of the tributes. And so that's where Snow is giving his speech there, and then we'll see later in the chariot parade as well.
Female tributes are to be reaped from the existing pool of victorious in each district.
What does he mean?
I think Jen does a great job in this sequence.
This is all fake snow.
Yes, but it was still cold.
It was cold.
It was really
It was very
cold.
windy.
Yeah, now we're getting to one of my favorite scenes in the movie, actually, when she goes to see Haymitch, knowing that she's now going to go back in the games to make the deal to save PETA. I really enjoy this scene. It's a nicely written scene and great performances from both Katniss and Woody.
What? Ask me to die?
I'm here to drink.
Finally, something I can help you with.
We always wanted to have the scene of her being sick the next day so we could show the consequences of her drinking, but it just didn't end up feeling like we had time to show that. But we always wanted to make sure that she really suffered for having decided to imbibe with him.
Yeah, that lasted for a while in the script, actually.
I know.
Yeah.
We wanted her to pay the price, but we ultimately felt like going to the games was a pretty significant price. She probably suffered enough.
Yeah.
We have to do whatever it takes to save him.
And this becomes a very, very important scene for the back half of the movie in terms of what her objectives are and saving PETA and Haymitch's promise and how that affects the end of the movie.
And really informs their whole relationship. This is a promise made and ultimately a promise broken, and it takes her quite some time to be able to forgive him. He's also in a terrible situation because he's clearly made the same promise to both of them. So there's no way he's going to be able to keep it to both. And we found ourselves talking and asking ourselves a lot, well, you know, Haymitch probably exists as sort of an unactivated cell in a revolution. His allegiances are known. Now, this is a scene we shot
In
before.
pre-production.
Yeah, before we started shooting.
Yeah, this is the very first thing we shot. Yeah, it was probably a week before we started principal photography. We had a window where the sun was going to be out, and we drove about 3 hours north of Atlanta to find this nice field. And shot for about half a day. Just getting the kiss right and getting the light right, and it was a nice way to sort of kick off the shoot. I always like this. This sort of, I expanded this a little from the way it was written in the script. And I just liked the idea of the sort of march to the gallows. And there's just something about seeing over their shoulder and walking to that Justice building with Effie trinkets standing on the stage that feels like you're walking to your death.
This is all shot at a goat farm in Atlanta. It's like an artist colony, and it's really beautifully filled out by visual effects and really beautifully designed, I think, by Phil. And another fantastic dress.
Yeah, another Alexander McQueen dress that Trish found.
And great collaboration with V. Neal as well. Again, when you see how much more opportunity, because we spend so much more time in the Capitol, there is to show kind of the Capitol excess and the way the makeup integrates with the wardrobe.
And now it's in this scene where you actually really start to get a sense of sort of the humanity in Effie, and that she's starting to hate her job right now.
Yeah. Again, this is a scene that we knew we'd shot The Reaping. It's a very dramatic scene in the first movie. And I think Francis found a lot of interesting ways to differentiate it from its predecessor. There are familiar elements, but, the empty balls of, with the one or two names each, and the way everybody approaches it so differently this time around is very powerful.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the key, since we passed through so many of the sort of similar, stops along the way in the story, that it's the emotional values had to be so different each time. And so what you have in play here is sort of Effie's humanity, but you've got this move that's going to happen where Haymitch is supposed to go to the games, but unfortunately, PETA volunteers. And then, of course, the goodbye that's cut short because of the new peacekeepers.
Oh no. But I get to say goodbye.
New plan, straight to the train.
I think it was one of the first scenes that you saw cut together, and one of the first scenes you showed me cut together. And I think we all were sort of surprised by how upsetting it was to see, even though they have so much composure, how upsetting it was to see them denied their goodbye.
Yeah, I was caught off guard by how moving the scene actually was. I mean, I thought that it was going to work, and I was really, impressed with Elizabeth's performance, but sort of teared up even the first time, which is always exciting.
I have my hair. I'm going to get you two boys something gold.
We see Effie's really making an effort here to show that she feels a connection to them, and that you can see her torn between her job and her feelings that have developed for them.
Yeah, and again, this is all starting to tie into the allies. These tokens that she's talking about are something that work in a very important way in the games.
Everything will be different because it's a quarter quill. The Capitol has spent...
So now we get some new shots of the Capitol, and we use the idea of the quarter quill to change and augment the world that was already created. And so Phil Messina, who designed the first movie, still based everything on the same aesthetic, and a lot of sort of similar architecture was used, but we had the room to build new tribute quarters here. So a new tower shot in this really interesting hotel in downtown Atlanta that was that sort of rib shape that looked like we're in the inside of an alien or something, atrium. And then we ended up shooting the tribute living quarters here, the apartments on the 10th floor of that hotel. We sort of built our set into a large open air floor of the hotel. Again, not one of our best locations for sound since there were conventions downstairs, but still an interesting location.
Also, you can see we've redesigned the AVOXs, and they don't get much explanation in these movies anymore. We'll finally be able to explain them in Mockingjay, and yet now their wardrobe reflects their silence. Their mouths are covered, and they're sort of silent sentinels throughout these scenes in the Capitol.
And the other half of the career pack, Brutus and Inabari.
Now we get our first glimpses of some of the other tributes. And one of the really fun things about this movie, casting-wise, is that, it's a whole different, kind of palette of tributes this time, that we have all different kinds of ages and all different kinds of people, and really fun group of people to cast, from the careers to, the Morphlings, to people like Jeffrey Wright, who's an amazing actor, and Amanda Plummer, and of course, Sam Claflin, who came in as Finnick, who I just think did a fantastic job. Another new addition who's not introduced here in this sequence is Jenna Malone as Joanna, who just impressed me from the second she walked in the room, and for her audition. I think she was Joanna when she walked in the room.
Yeah, she stole the part.
Mags was his mentor and basically raised him. If he's trying to...
And Lynn Cohen, or Mags. She's a fantastic actress. I remember seeing her in Munich and being very, very impressed. And so really fun to work with her, and a real trooper running around the jungle, being carried around by Sam or Sam's stunt double.
Coming up on a really iconic Finnick scene. We took it, straight from the book. Such a great introduction to him as a character for her. You can't tell whether to trust him or not, and it seems like not would be the right choice.
Yeah, and it was it's such an iconic moment in the book, and man, it was this is probably one of the trickiest scenes to shoot. Again, because of trains. So we have these, we've got 12 horses and 6 chariots, that's what we had here on the day. And right over their heads, over Finnick's head there, over the top of that arch, there's a train track that runs through the inside of this convention center parking garage where we were shooting, as the sort of the tribute center where they're loading up before they go out into the Avenue of the Tributes. And these trains would go by and these horses would freak out. And so it was such a nerve-wracking day, just making sure that these horses stayed safe and calm, and that we could shoot the scene safely.
They're really dramatic animals. They're Frisians who have the gated walk. This is what they do for a living, but they were shipped out to us from
British Columbia. Yeah.
So they'd had a long journey, and then they had to really tolerate a lot of noise.
It just added a sort of a load of stress on a day that actually shouldn't really have had any. We could have just focused purely on, performance, and there was just so many other factors this day.
Have a good day.
Sam was worked very hard to keep that chest smooth. He had to get his chest shaved regularly, and he worked really hard to be in shape for the scene because such an iconic scene, and he knew he was going to be not wearing a whole lot of clothes.
Yeah.
Straight ahead as if the audience in this whole event are beneath you.
That should be easy.
Now we're about to come out into the chariot sequence. So it's another one of what becomes sort of one of the iconic steps into going into the games, and, needing to find a different emotional value this time. And one of the things that we did was shoot it during the day, to allow us to expand the scope of the place and the pageantry of it all, and the celebration, and adding the drummers and the fountains, and the flowers getting thrown down from the stands. And
yeah, I loved the choices that you made here with this, the scope and scale of it. It's so awful, and yet you can't help but get swept up in the drama of it.
Yeah, and the big difference here, though, is that instead of sort of going wide-eyed and nervous out here, she knows that she's going to go face, the man that's putting her to her death. And it's a very different feeling. It's much more of a face-off this time around. And she's using the fire and the embers from her dress as an act of reverence. And getting the crowd to chant her name. And he hears the support that the Capitol has for her.
She really, at this point, I think, feels that she has nothing left to lose. She intends to die in these games. She's planning to get Peeta home safely, but she does not plan to come home herself, so she's going to put up a fight.
So this and the next scene, which is also one of my favorite scenes in the movie, are all part of the sort of scouting mission that Woody has, Haymitch has sent them on. Pretty much from the moment they come into the capital for the games, he tells them that it's going to be different and tells them they have to make allies and starts to introduce them to the tribute. So the meeting with Finnick is an introduction to a tribute, and meeting Chaff and Seed are here, and now getting into the elevator, we meet Joanna, which a really fun scene. Would have been more fun to shoot had Jen not had food poisoning this day, but going up and down an elevator 50 times in an afternoon with food poisoning wasn't any fun, but still a great performance.
It's also very poignant because Woody, Haymitch has history with these other tributes. These are people who he knows. The dynamics of this scene are really fantastic. Jenna really, really played it so well, and all of them, I think, are just great here. We had a great, surprising mishap on this day too.
Oh yeah, it was hilarious. I think it was one of these takes on this kind of a shot here where we sort of rode the elevator up, and when the doors open like that, we were supposed to have locked off all the floors, and I think a PA who sent the elevator up at the beginning of the take hit one floor wrong, and so it opened up on 41 instead of 42 or something, and there was a guy standing there with the elevator doors opening and seeing a topless Joanna there. And it was great because he had this big cheesy mustache and a giant Starbucks cup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was an outtake that got a lot of play on set.
Yes. Now, again, we're still on this sort of scouting mission, really starting to meet and see who we're up against here and who we're going to find are either enemies or allies.
For Katniss, it's very hard to think about taking any allies. She wants to be on her own. She's just naturally prone towards trusting only herself and now PETA. And so she doesn't want to give any of these people a chance to either be a source of weakness for her, or also she doesn't want to get attached. But she can't quite help herself.
Yeah, and again, this is another one of the sort of classic stepping stones in the story on the way to the arena. And again, we tried to make the emotional values different here so that instead of just going in and sort of sizing up who's trying to kill you, you're actually on a scouting mission and trying to see who you may want to ally with. And we also sort of really, really trimmed it up. So it's a very short sequence in the scope of the movie, all of this training. And what's interesting about it too is that people are actually much less interested in actual training. I think, you'll find that the training center is much emptier than it was in the first movie, and people are getting a lot less guidance than they were in the first movies. And really the careers are really the only ones that are there, sort of out there practicing their killing skills.
Well, it's a huge betrayal for all of these victors that they're supposed to be set for life, and now they're having to come back and come back to these games after having trained people year in and year out and seen most of those people die. Now they're having to go back, something they never imagined having to do, and they're angry. But in this scene, she's meeting Wyrus and Beatty, and these are like two of the geniuses. They come from the district that does technology. Beatty has designed a lot of the elements that the Capitol has relied on. And this is a really poignant scene where she meets Mags.
Here for that young girl. It was really brave.
And it's so great. And what's really interesting too is to think that when you get through to the end of this movie and you discover who knew what, to sort of backtrack to these moments of meeting Wyrus and Beatty and meeting Mags and starting to think about what they know of what the plans would be and what they know of the importance of Katniss. And it's really fascinating to think about this and how it all would have worked. These people having to stay silent so nobody could pick up on any plan. How scary and unpredictable it all would have been.
really cool design choices in this. This is a parking garage. It's the least glamorous location imaginable and also noisy. But I think that Francis and Yo and the visual effects team, Yannick, I think they all really work together here, along with practical effects as well, to just create a fantastic sequence.
Yeah, and this was one of the changes that we made to the tribute center this time, is that in training we were going to use holograms instead of kind of wooden human targets. And in the book, I think when she was showing Mags how to hunt, they were like rabbits and squirrels and things. And so we just tweaked it into more of a, human hunting target practice.
At least half the tributes want you as an ally.
Well, I saw her shoot.
Well, sweetheart, you got your pick of the litter.
I want Wyrus and Beatty.
I always love too that, of anybody to pick, Katniss picks the sort of the least obvious choices to ally with, but the kindest.
I like this sequence. I feel like again, we don't have much time to tell the story of these victors, but, they're all veterans. They are all damaged. But they have their relationships. There's a tenderness between them. And there's just little moments here that I actually find very poignant, and in seeing the relationships, and all that's hinted at that we have to imagine, but don't have much time to explore.
Yeah, it's nice how you sort of very quietly, without no dialogue, you really start to get a sense of some of their relationships and some of their personalities. And, even though it's hard to trust Finnick at this point in the story, you can see some of his warmth in it. Phil and his designers really did a great job creating this sort of graffiti, kind of fast graffiti art version of this painting of Rue that Peeta did. Found some great references and sort of had one of his illustrators create that, and then we actually just painted it on the floor. I thought he did a great job. I think it's still your screensaver on your phone, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Nice scene. We shot this whole training sequence in the first week of production. It's a lot to do in the first week.
Also, this is a really, iconic scene in the book, the hanging of the effigy of Seneca. But we also worried about, we've got people who, may not know the books as well. Will they know who he is? And so we tried to make sure that the scene certainly reads as a hugely defiant scene. We tried to make it very clear who she is sending up, and that she's sending a signal to Plutarch that he's next.
Stanley.
Mm-hmm.
I think the entire crew probably laughed the most over the 3 days that we shot this sequence. Just watching Stanley do Caesar Flickerman is such a blast and so much fun. Again, because it's a special event, Quarter Quell, we had some freedom to create a new soundstage for his show. And Phil designed this pretty amazing stage with all these LED lights that are, built into it, and built just the front part of this audience, and sort of did crowd duplication there for the back and for the stadium.
I also think that, you really get a sense of just how insidious Caesar is here, because he's playing up the pathos of, isn't it just so tragic to have to say goodbye to these victors who they've loved, and yet isn't it just the greatest show on earth? And he's just so dark and demented. This dress, I think Chris just did an extraordinary job with this dress.
Yeah, she did. She had Trish had an enormous amount of work. I want to say within the first 6 weeks of shooting, we had the party at the Snow's mansion with all the Capitol people. I mean, the chariot parades, which had 24 costumes, and we had these interviews, which have 24 costumes, and plus Capitol people, and just an unbelievable amount of work. And so the level of detail she was, that she managed to sort of to get, and the level of finish that she managed to get in such a short amount of time and for so many people was just astonishing. And this wedding dress was a knockout, and so is the Mockingjay dress that's revealed underneath it. This was a fun sequence that we worked on with Suzanne here, that there was an earlier draft of the script. This was all very short, and then I started to worry that some of the actors, only having like a line or two to sort of a little snippet to get a sense of their, the beginning of their rebellion against the Capitol and their displeasure with being sent back in the games. We started to work on more dialogue, and then it started to sort of fashion it into something that was more specific to the character, to each of the characters, and we came up with some fun stuff. So one of my favorites is Joanna, who's about to come up. I just think I get a kick out of her character. Another very cool dress from Trish.
I think this is another really beautiful moment, certainly between both Cinna and Katniss and in their relationships, and has obviously made a very fateful decision in designing this dress, but also between Effie and Katniss. Such a heartfelt moment.
There's a glimpse of another great Trish costume coming up here, which is that Joanna's assistant who's like fully encased in this great outfit. If you can, you should pause the DVD and take a look at that. But we needed to cast somebody that was actually very small to fit into that outfit. But I mean, it's head to toe fully encased in this, what is it, sort of a herringbone fabric?
Mm-hmm. The cone head.
Yes, with a cone head.
It's also a great moment here
with Joanna.
With Joanna, between the two of them, they've had they're at odds. They don't get along very well. But Joanna, when she realizes that this dress has been forced on Katniss by the president, is on her side and wants her to show him, to make him sorry he did it.
This is one of the first moments when she spins and reveals the Mockingjay dress, that she really starts to connect herself to being the Mockingjay. That's a sort of a slow reveal to her over the course of this, and not really until the end of the story, the end of the movie, does she really fully understand what that means.
I also think you see here how Katniss has learned to play the game. That when she's first interviewed by Caesar in the first movie, she's like a deer in the headlights. She barely knows how to handle herself. She's so uncertain. And now she's, manipulating him right back. She's really learned how to play the game.
Yeah, and the other thing that, that we were tracking here too is the audience response. So that they're all sort of, that the tributes, each of them coming out and telling their story and starting to fight back a little bit, is kind of riling them up more and more and more. So this reveal of this dress is a big thing, but then Peeta's bomb is an even bigger thing.
This is one of my favorite parts of the movie. I just really love this part. I love how Caesar doesn't want to even say the M word.
Yes, I know. Didn't plan out the way Snow wanted it to. And poor Cinna. I thought Trish did a great job with Peta's clothes here, too. You know, they're really nice. You know, Peta dressed in what he would have gotten married in. She was inspired by a lot of Dutch designers, and I like those metal collars.
Yeah, Peta's really showing a sophistication here and upping the ante. I think it's all news to Katniss. They have not planned out any of this, so she's playing catch up. But it has exactly the effect that he's hoping for. The crowd is outraged, and you start to see Caesar losing control for the first time.
One of our outtakes, Woody doing his big spit take. I don't know if you remember that. When Woody doing a spit take after drinking from his flask. The news. The baby. Yeah, and for the first time here, I always like this too, this idea that the victors, you know, even if it's just for now, have all joined hands, a united front against the Capitol.
You can see here, Caesar plays their friend, but he really isn't.
Baby bomb was a stroke of genius. Unfortunately, games are still on.
Now we get the tokens that come into play and that play later in the arena, and also have a scene here that probably has one of our more iconic lines from the story. Haymitch tells her to remember who the enemy is, who the real enemy is. And so that line takes us back all the way to that first meeting with Snow, and will take us all the way to the climax of the film.
There's anyone else in there? Just you.
And I love this idea, part of Katniss and Peta's story. I know we sort of skipped over it on the victory tour, but there's this moment on the victory tour where she wakes up from a nightmare and he comes running in to make sure she's okay, and then she asks him to stay, and they start to stay together to comfort each other because of their nightmares and the shared experience that they have. We only have a few glimpses of it, but I think it's really nice for that.
When she says to him in the train, you know, stay with me, and he says, always. It's a real iconic connection between them, and goes to the heart of their relationship.
So this is one of the first glimpses of a new hovercraft designed for the movie as well. We see a lot more of them here. We see in the liftoff and taking her to the games, and we see a slightly smaller, different version, kind of a drone version of it in the games that's pulling the bodies out. Another great effects shot from Dean Egg, one of our visual effects houses. Did a great job on these cities and on all the arena stuff as well. This was another key scene in terms of, figuring out the plan, Snow's and Plutarch's plan, and what they think they're doing, and this idea of still continuing the attempt at ruining her image before she dies. And the fact that, she may be holding people's hands now, but when it comes down to it, she's going to be killing these tributes that other people love and these friends and allies that she's made, and that she'll just become another one of them.
Yeah, Plutarch is really walking a tightrope here because so far all of the things that he's promised haven't really worked out. Katniss has only become more beloved and more of a symbol, but he's claiming here it's all part of his plan, that build her up and then show her true colors once she starts turning on her friends in the games.
This is also one of my favorite sequences in the movie. I really like this beat with Cinna. And again, the beginning of the games would be difficult to create sort of a different feeling than the tension from the first movie. But I think by having Cinna be beaten, almost to death here in front of her right before she's lifted up into the arena, sort of instantly kind of changes it and charges it in a different way, in a really fantastic way. Yeah, and one of the trickier effect shots in the movie was one of the shots that's about to come up where we actually see Cinna being dragged away, and we go up the elevator with Katniss and stay with her without cutting until we come out into the arena. I love the sound here too, that how dead everything sounds when you're inside with her. You can just hear her screams. Here we go. It's the shot. This was our last shot in Atlanta. We shot on stage before going to Hawaii. Cool. I really like this shot.
Yeah, it's a really great shot. Very tricky.
And now it's interesting. We shot the arena stuff in so many different ways. The shot of her rising up was shot on stage. The cuts after it, almost the rest of this stuff was all shot in Atlanta, where we actually found this circular pond and built the cornucopia and some of the spokes and some of the platforms there out in this water that was horribly cold. It was 40 degrees or something insane. And sort of put it together, and all these great backgrounds were pieced together by Dean Egg, one of our visual effects houses, and really just unbelievable work. The amount of detail that went into the jungles is crazy. There's wind and breeze and bugs and mist and all kinds of stuff happening in those jungles to make them real.
And what we shot was in the middle of a water park that had slides in the background and very sort of murky looking water, and just a few of the spokes were built. So it's a really, remarkable bit of artistry from the visual effects.
Yeah, and then we ended up doing a couple of pickups in Los Angeles at Universal Studios at the water tank for some of the water shots and some of the swimming. Because for whatever reason, we had horrible luck with just getting the shot of her diving off of the platform. I think we never quite got it in Atlanta because the water was murky and freezing, and didn't quite get it in Hawaii because bad weather or platform floating away, or we had, I think, a jellyfish infestation one day. So, it took some time, but we sort of finally all pieced it together. And then anywhere here in this area around the cornucopia, if we were on the beach, we were most likely in Hawaii, and we shot up on the North Shore around Cavella.
Mags, this part in Atlanta where Mags is up on the one of the spokes, and she took a tumble into the water. She was a pretty good sport about it. It was very cold.
She was, but the scary thing about that actually was that there's some changes here. First of all, PETA never killed anybody here in the book. This was something that we added, that we needed to tweak his character a little bit, and thought it was important that he sort of take care of himself some.
Yeah, in the book, it's a big thing that nobody else can swim, but we found that to be very hard to communicate filmically and decided to change it.
This is it's actually our first true IMAX shot with them traveling through the jungle, and we've transitioned now from spherical. You'll notice the aspect ratio changed when she comes up the elevator. But because there's so many layered visual effects in the opening sequence, we shot that with 35 millimeter spherical lenses, Super 35. And then when they run into the jungle, we transitioned to IMAX 15 perf. And the resolution is just unbelievable. They are just really loud and really heavy, but really fun to see the footage and see the resolution, and especially in the jungle. Pretty nice. But that story about Mags, that, when we were shooting in Atlanta, originally it was scripted that she would swim. Katniss would see her swimming over to the spoke, and we tested it, but because the water was 40 degrees, the medics decided that she couldn't go in the water, that her blood pressure would shoot up too quickly. So, of course, the first take we do where she gets on Finnick's back, he slips and falls, and they tumble into the water.
They're both from a ocean faring district, so they're both able to swim. And in the books, I think they're able to swim, Katniss is able to swim, and most of the other characters aren't. But I'd say that was something that cinematically went by the wayside, so we gave PETA a little bit more of an active role in his own rescue, while still trying to build the alliance between Finnick, Mags, PETA, and Katniss. Katniss didn't want allies, but she's got them. But she's very uncertain as to what their motives are.
And that's really what that last scene is about, where Finnick where she confronts Finnick about laughing at the cannon. And that scene and this scene, it was really interesting in working on the screenplay with everybody for this. Sort of tracking this kind of distrust of Finnick was one thing, but then when you suddenly start shooting these sequences and seeing all the different things that he does, it was getting harder and harder to not trust him, because you realize very early on that he could have killed her, but he didn't. He then kills someone that was coming after her, so saves her life. He then goes and finds PETA. He goes in to try and help save PETA. He carries this old woman around on his back through the jungle, and now saves PETA's life. And, it's pretty honorable. It's, you have to have a pretty sort of deep level of distrust in your soul to not trust Finnick. But it's also one of the great things about Sam. I think he's so likable and so warm and so emotional, which I think becomes a huge part of Finnick's character.
On the other side of the relationship is Finnick checking her out and seeing what she's made of. And one of the things I love in this scene is he's watching all of this unfold between them. And he's seeing for the first time that her love for PETA is not an act, that she really feels for him and really cares for him. And he sees her differently after this, too.
Yeah, both he and Snow. And so something that's key for the end of the very, very end of this movie and the next stories starts to take place when Snow sees that hug and sees that she really does care for him. I think plans begin to form in his head.
So you shall.
Yeah, I love the granddaughter stuff. As we talked about before, we invented these scenes. The books are strictly through Katniss's point of view, so we were able to have some fun creating a life outside of her perspective. And the scenes with the granddaughter doesn't exist she's referred to at the very end of Mockingjay, but introducing her as a way for Snow to see the effect that Katniss has on people. It's a great device, and I love how she's always sort of inadvertently sticking it to him.
Yeah. Now I get to see Katniss doing some of what she does best, climbing trees. Start to get a sense of the arena for the first time here, a very different arena. Starting to begin the mystery of the arena, which is a smaller story thread that starts to play through this portion, this back third of the movie. Get to see some of the force field there. This was one of our trickier locations to shoot in. There was we sort of created this bowl-shaped arena, and so at a certain point we needed to be on a hill. And so we were in the Waimea Valley on the north shore of Oahu and shooting on this sort of hillside off of this fire road. And it's really, quite beautiful, and this great banyan tree and some really beautiful moss-covered rocks and some nice stuff up there. But it's tricky when you're sort of slipping and sliding around the mud and in the rain and on a hillside, and there was some rock slides, and we have to be careful because there's a lot of sacred sites around where we're shooting here, and so we were having a lot of blessings before we would shoot, to make sure that everything would go well.
We also had a lot of rain and mud. It was a very, it's Hawaii. You expect sort of a tropical paradise, but they don't call it a rainforest for nothing.
Yeah, a lot of rain and a lot of mosquitoes. One of the things, just sort of technical things that we did was in the jungle here, we actually shot we shot maybe 2 nights in total, real nights. Everything else was done day for night. And that was for a few reasons. One was that Suzanne had written in the books that the jungle and night was sort of lit by kind of an artificially bright full moonlight. So you can see. And it's something that I liked, but also I just think when we're in places like a jungle or like, being out at a beach or something, that nighttime is very difficult, that you can only light such a small amount of area. And so shooting day for night allowed us to keep some expanse and sense of geography within the jungle itself. But I have to say it made it also a much more pleasant shoot than staying up for, 40 nights or so in the Hawaiian jungle. We condensed this portion of the story down a lot. There was much more of a search for water in the book and hunting for strange little animals and things like that. But we got them to their spile quickly and got them hydrated.
We did the same thing in the first movie as well. The survival element of the games is a really powerful part of the books, and you really feel it when you're in her point of view, just the desperation for food and water. But in cinematic terms, it's much harder to communicate things like thirst or hunger. But I think that the sense of relief here and this exchange between Finnick and Mags, you really do feel how critical it is for them to pass the threshold of having found water, and what a key it is to this arena.
Yeah, and I mean, any moment that we could sort of give Finnick and Mags, that we could see the two of them together to sort of help with this moment that's about to come up, which is Mags's death, was key. So to get that last little exchange where he fills a leaf up with water and brings it down to her, and she can touch his face, I think was really important. And this again sort of kickstarts up the mystery of the arena, that now the arena is making strange noises and lightning is striking a tall tree. The arena plays a much stronger factor in the games, I think, in this in the Quarter Quell than it did in the last one.
Well, if you're not...
I mean, in the first movie, really, it's about survival, and the tributes are trying to kill each other. And in this one, you much more have a case of that the arena is trying to kill them. And it's much more about their relationships with each other and this idea of friends, allies, enemies, and figuring out who is which.
And one thing we tried to do in these sequences, and we're about to get into the poison fog sequence here, was to give distinct emotional values to each of them. And what's really nice is that there's some real storytelling in each of them. So they don't become just chases or just escapes, but rather very important story elements happen. And in this one, obviously the biggest story element that takes place is the fact that Mag sacrifices herself so that Peeta and Katniss can go on, and so that Finnick won't help her but help Katniss and Peeta. Very, very important. But I think the idea emotionally is that it's about loss.
This is something you and I talked about the first time we met. And it's a really powerful idea when you first mentioned it, and it's something that, really stayed alive throughout the process. And I think it's really captured the scene.
And this was fun stuff to do. This is another IMAX sequence as well. This was added in. We started to get really excited by IMAX, even though it was pretty difficult to shoot with just logistically. But I started to get excited by the footage, and really fun with, using it on these cable cams and in the jungle and with the scope and the fog and the racing through the leaves. And
also some great special effects makeup from V. Neal and her team. These blisters are really nasty.
And we had, for some of the more rugged stuff, we had a great stunt double for Mags, for Lynn, because we just couldn't race at top speed through jungle and, plants and jumping over logs and things with Lynn on Sam's back. So we had a great stunt double and did some face replacement there. Oh, here we come. This is probably one of our most miserable locations. It was really cool looking with these hollow trees, but all those roots that you see sticking out there all have thorns sticking off of them. So everybody was getting sliced up by these thorns on these hollow trees and slipping around in the mud. It was probably the muddiest location of our shoot.
They're running and they keep tripping and falling, and so they're falling in the movie, but they fell for real quite a bit. It was a really tough location.
Peeta, please. Peeta, please stand up. We have to go. Peeta, please.
Max?
This was a hard scene to get right because it has to be really painful. It has to be really surprising. It has to happen quickly because the fog is encroaching on them. But you also really want to feel that it's a sacrifice that she makes unilaterally, and the last thing in the world that any of these three characters would have wanted her to do. And to get all of those things in balance was very tricky.
And another part of the mystery of the arena, the idea of these force fields, that she thinks she's facing certain death now, that she can no longer move and the fog is coming down toward her. But then it stops. Yeah, putting these sequences all together, it's pretty unbelievable to see how relentless this arena actually is against them.
Well, I think our actors do a great job. Obviously, these are, in this arena, these are digitally created threats largely. And yet you really do feel like they're there in the moment, and these things are, that they're reacting to real things that are befalling them.
Yeah, that was a really tricky sequence, this one coming up, especially with the monkeys, that they, these things, just did not exist. And every once in a while we could put in, a small performer that was acting like a monkey, but they really couldn't move fast enough to move like the monkeys that we had designed. So
it's hard to take a guy seriously who's running around acting like a monkey.
Yes. But I think the trickiest thing, it was sort of okay to know where they were, but the trickiest thing is that when you actually interacted with them, that anytime you would hit something, slice something, shove something, that you sort of felt the real physics of a real, creature with mass sort of up against you at a certain point. And that was something to really figure out, and worked closely with Yannick, our visual effects supervisor, and sort of creating the behavior of these monkeys that are coming up. And one of the, I think, sort of great moves that we made early on was looking at real baboon behavior. And when something sort of scary happens to one, all the baboons might sort of run and scatter for a moment before spinning around. Otherwise, we would, be sort of faced with this common dilemma of, your hero being surrounded by, a large number of bad things, but, somehow they're not getting attacked by all of them at once and getting overwhelmed instantly. And I think that behavior really helped and made it a much more naturalistic sequence, I think.
It's obviously a big turning point in their relationship. A true alliance has been formed. They've rescued Finnick and really feel the loss of Mags and the sacrifice that she's made and what it means to him. And they've formed an alliance here that will be very challenging for Katniss to figure out what to do as she worries about it. What will happen when it breaks?
Weta did a remarkable job with these monkeys. They're so unbelievably realized.
Yeah.
Walk over here slowly.
So in talking about the emotional values of different sequences, for me, this one was the scary sequence. This was the one where you're terrified and not running for your life, and it's not necessarily about loss, but this is the one where you feel boxed in and you should be on the edge of your seat. And again, story-wise, there's another few sort of big moments here. One more element of our sort of mystery of the arena, with the monkeys mysteriously stopping at the end of the sequence. But also another one of the tributes sacrificing herself for Peeta, which we later sort of put together as all part of a much larger plan. Huge important story moments happening in these sequences. Some kind of fun stuff action-wise here. Worked with Chad Stahelski, our stunt coordinator, and second unit director on this to really sort of fashion together an action sequence. And so we had prevised this sequence for the basic storytelling, and then Chad went out with his guys when we'd found this location and choreographed a real fight. And then we sort of put that together and taught it to the actors, and then went and shot it for about a week. I think this might be, one of the more miserable spots for the actors. I think they got really tired of waiting around in this kind of swampy pool for a week and going underwater. Jen told me that she got some horrible ear infection, I think, from being shoved underwater. And here we go. Here's the morphling sacrificing herself.
Creating these mutts, so that they feel real in their behavior, but also feel heightened in a way that the Capitol could design and them for maximum impact some interesting choices were made.
Yeah, so we changed the color a little bit. And one of the interesting things to note is that if you were doing a completely naturalistic version of these monkeys, each one would be distinctly different in size, different in shape, different kind of scarring and nicks and things on the faces. And what we did was, unless one was wet and one was dry, they're all exactly the same. So none change in size. There's no sort of difference in terms of personality.
All those colors. Don't worry about anything.
I really like this sequence too.
Yeah, me too.
Right here with you.
This we shot in Cavella Bay on the north shore of Oahu, and we found this great crescent-shaped beach that was right by the hotel we were staying. And everywhere that we shot, needed some sort of visual extensions and things, so we extended some of the jungle and the mountain ranges and augmented the sky here, but I think it's a really, really nice scene. And again, another one of the scenes where Katniss sees and really appreciates Peeta's empathy.
And here he's told her how, the sunset and the orange of sunset is his favorite color. And he shares with the morphlings, they are experts in camouflage and in painting. And we didn't have much time to show their skills during training. But the way that he connects with her in her last moments so that she's looking at the colors of the sky is really touching.
Now, this was a Michael Arndt edition, this brief little scene. There was a longer version for a while where they really debated it, but this idea of sort of planting the seeds of, something else is going on here. This is just strange with Mags sacrificing herself and the Morphling sacrificing herself. There's something's up.
This is real raw fish.
Real raw fish that Jen hated, even though she was putting soy sauce on it. But it was snapper. We had a sushi chef come in and bring sushi grade snapper that was like, so it was the right size, and you'd buy that it would be in that kind of water. And
Thank you.
but I think we only had her do maybe 2 takes or something. But it's real fish. I think there were some paparazzi photos of it, and people thought that it was fake.
Yeah. I think we arrested those paparazzi, as a matter of fact.
And this is another one. I mean, another one of the, the threats that the arena presents to the tributes here. But really, it's another sort of clue in the sort of mystery of the arena here. And it's changed a little bit from the book. And this was actually a nice idea that Eric from Lionsgate had, which was to sort of confine the tidal wave just to the one piece of the pie in the arena, and then have the sort of displacement of the water create the wave that wets the sand.
They're trying to figure out this puzzle. We're trying to dole out clues so that the audience doesn't get ahead of Katniss. But they're not going to be able to fully understand it until the big clue comes from Wyrus in the sequence that's about to unfold.
Another key alliance sequence here, the meeting of Joanna, discovering that she's actually gotten Wyrus and Beatty out for Katniss. It's a great Joanna scene. Another noisy location with waves everywhere.
I thought it was water.
This is one of
Turned out to be blood.
Joanna audition scenes. Jenna just killed these auditions. She stole the part from the day she auditioned on, and it was game over for everybody else. And this is one of the scenes she did in her audition.
Yeah, I had seen a bunch of other women come in and read for Joanna, and there was, a bunch of people that were just kind of sort of acting bitchy, or sort of acting angry and acting bitchy, and you didn't really feel like it was part of their DNA. And I knew Jenna's work, and admired it, and I knew she was coming in, and the door opened and she walked in, and it was not what I expected. I mean, she was already sort of inhabited by Joanna, and it was intimidating. Her eyes were red and she was angry, and she was this girl that was sort of slightly unhinged. And she actually made me nervous, which was pretty impressive. And then she just from there just killed the audition, but had a much more sort of civilized conversation after the audition. But man, she was scary. And now we're finally getting to the reveal. Wyrus, in her sort of PTSD mumblings, finally helps them discover the way this arena works.
Joanna calls Wyrus and Beatty nuts and bolts.
It's a clock. Oh my God, it's a clock. Wyrus, you're a genius. You're a genius.
So this shot we actually did in Atlanta, surprisingly. I mean, I think really the only real thing in it now are the tributes walking across that spoke. But we did this helicopter shot in Atlanta where we had built the cornucopia, and could not look any further from what Atlanta looked like. So now it's the time where we're starting to get into the plan and the plans that these other tributes have, and starting to get the sort of the slightest hints at how the sort of computers are working in their heads. Beatty's starting to put things together with the lightning tree and the fact that it's a clock, and he's got his wire. The sequence coming up was a fun one to create. It's actually only about a paragraph long in the book where the cornucopia spins. But it felt like such a fresh kind of new idea for something that I had never seen before. There's some good opportunities for some story moments in terms of alliances and people helping each other. That it was something I really wanted to explore. So it was a fun one to create, and a tough challenge to figure out how to actually accomplish. And but I'm really pleased with the results.
It's a great bit of practical effects from Steve Kremen. He built what you're about to see, which is what we call the flying biscuit, spinning cornucopia that was built on an old engine and a motor that spun it around. It was obviously separate from the one that we used that had the actual cornucopia on it. But it had the pieces that would cast the proper shadows, and had these rocks that we could fasten our actors to, so that when they were spinning, they had something to hold on to.
Yeah, but it was we spent about maybe 3 or 4 days or something on this flying biscuit spinning around, and you'd bring different combinations of the actors up there and tie them down and safety them off and start spinning this thing around. And crew members were taking Dramamine and wearing those wristbands and things for motion sickness, and it was an ordeal, but a fun experience.
Well, and again, I think you did a great job of really, the feeling of this sequence is one of alliances formed. They are looking out for each other now. They are doing everything they can to keep each other alive. Patton has finally given over to the whole ally thing, at least for the moment.
Yeah. And it's right around here. I think it's, starting with the connection with Finnick after Mags's death, and then going through here where you sort of start to trust people more and more. You start to come up against the problem of when you might have to turn on these people you've grown to like. And I like that transition from sort of distrust to trust to, oh man, I might have to kill these people. Another fun sequence. I mean, what's interesting about this one is it's the least dangerous in terms of life threats against your life. This part of the arena, but it might be the most torturous psychologically. And I'm really pleased with the way this sequence turned out. Just reminds you that what the Capitol's capable of, and using the people that you love against them.
Also, another example of the mutations, something that Suzanne creates in these books, that the Capitol is able to take animals and alter them. These jabberjays they're surveillance creatures created by the Capitol, but they mated with the mockingbird to create the mockingjay, which has become a tool of the resistance and a symbol of resistance.
Little addition from our visual effects supervisor, the twitching wing in the foreground.
This is another great Joanna moment coming up.
Country loves your sister.
Get you some one of the most important things to know about the victors is that their compliance has been extracted from them by the manipulation of hurting the people and threatening the people that they love. And so for Joanna, she seems like she has nothing left to lose because none of the people she loves are left. And that's part of Hamish's backstory as well, that he's lost his people. It's what makes Finnick so vulnerable. It's what makes Katniss so vulnerable.
It's one of the things that drives Katniss in the next stories is the idea of protecting who she has left.
Annie Crester, the girl Max volunteered for. She won like 5 years ago.
This is the introduction of Annie. Get a glimpse of her very briefly early on, covering her face in the Reaping video where Finnick and Mags are chosen. She becomes a bigger character in the next stories.
Here is a great scene from Jeffrey Wright. I mean, here we have an extraordinarily gifted actor who, in this movie, has a role that's really critical, but doesn't have a ton of opportunities to really show all that this character has to offer. So here we really see his intelligence, his knowledge of the tools of the Capitol, and it's a very important setup to see the way his mind works as we take him into the Mockingjay movies, and he becomes a critical player in the revolution.
There's also some great physicality in Jeffrey's performances. There's one brief mention of him taking a knife in the back to get the wire that he's, specifically, wanted to get from the cornucopia. It was very important to him, obviously part of his plan. And he plays this injured back quite a lot. He has minimal use of one of his arms. And if you watch and track his performance through, you can see how he really uses his physicality a lot in his performances. And some even very, very small, subtle things later on in the movie when he wakes up later in the hovercraft and you see just like his finger twitching and this idea of these, something's happened to his nervous system and breaking his back, and very, very good. Now, this is that moment where Katniss is facing the fact that she might have to kill some of these people that she's grown to like. This is a nice scene. Another one that James Newton Howard just scored beautifully, and how it shifts from this into the love theme when they kiss. It's a really good, strong moment.
And that love theme is introduced in the first movie. You see it played on guitar in the cave when they have their kiss in the first movie. Now it develops in this movie as their romance grows, and I think this is a really, a very powerful scene between them. Katniss is really realizing what Peeta means to her.
I'd have nothing. Nobody else that I care about.
Peeta.
It's different for you. Family needs you.
And a great performance by Josh in this, I think. And of course,
You have to
another
live.
one of Effie's pieces of jewelry.
What about you?
Scenes like this, we had quite a few of these scenes that were sort of at dusk or dawn that we would end up shooting over the course of a couple days, and this was one of them, where we shot at this beach for about a week, and over the course of 2 or 3 nights, just after sunset, before we would wrap, we would go do a piece of the scene, and it was nice. So we could sort of change the feeling a little bit. I think the first time we shot it, we didn't quite have the empathy for the other tributes quite the way we wanted it, and so we kept taking shots at it over the course of a couple nights, and then Jen got this performance.
She is preparing to fight.
That's our girl.
So this is a big moment for Plutarch here. He now knows the plan is underway. Hopefully it'll work. And he's part of it. And the fun thing to think about the scene when you look back, once you know the end, is to see that when he walks out here, he actually doesn't go back down to the control room. That he's walking right out some other door and heading to a hovercraft and meeting Haymitch, and life is going to change for him.
He's got real ice water in his veins. I love where we are now in terms of the love story between Katniss and Peeta. She's really chosen him now, and they don't get very long together, but she's made her choice. I think he's really earned her love, and really, I think, feel why she's ended up coming to this place with him.
So we found this fantastic banyan tree to be the lightning tree in one of our locations in Oahu, and we had the effects house DNEG still sort of amped it up for us. They sort of lifted it up and made it a little taller and made it a little wider. But just a beautiful tree, and sort of sitting out sort of on its own in a strange way, and just kind of iconic looking. But now we've grown to sort of trust all these people and care for them, and it's this scene was really key in sort of setting up the end and sort of starting to reintroduce the distrust and a little bit of that paranoia. And now knowing that if we get rid of these careers and it's just the 8 of us that are left, what's going to happen next? There's a great thing that happened in rehearsal. I mean, we sort of tweaked some of the dialogue around a little bit or reordered it a bit, and it was this great sort of sense of them all kind of ganging up on her. They're all kind of surrounding her and kind of coming at her from different angles. And, it's a little shocking after the sort of the warmth of the last scenes with everybody.
This is, they've made a very fateful decision to separate here. And
they don't see each other for a long time.
Come on. I want to put as much distance between me and this beach as possible. Crying is not how I want to go.
And now this begins sort of basically the ramp up to the climax of the movie here, where all hell breaks loose. This was something that took a lot of work, making sure that we were really tracking all of this properly, what we see, what we don't see, what we're thinking about people, what people are saying. How much do you trust? How much do you just distrust? And it was really key that she become very, very paranoid now that everything fell apart. So even that, for a while we were having him say Katniss. When we shot it, he was saying Katniss, and we changed it to him saying Joanna.
So at this point, she really, it's easy for her to believe that they've betrayed her and that the alliance has broken. And Haymitch's line of remember who the real enemy is about to be really put to the test for her.
Beatty.
And this is kind of where a lot of, the sort of visual storytelling starts to kind of piece together and climax here with the setup of the force field, the idea of, what happens to the force field, the electrical wire, and the lightning about to hit the lightning tree, that all these pieces kind of come together and help Katniss put together the plan.
It's also obviously what Plutarch has sold to Snow is that at this moment, Katniss will show her true colors. Snow's very invested in, she's going to kill Finnick. He's a capital darling. This is the crux of what Plutarch has sold to Snow. And now...
Katniss?
And it's tricky because, these people can't just say what the plan is because the Capitol will, swoop right on down and grab them all if they knew there was a plan. So it's all like speaking in code. Now we have sort of the epiphany moment here of lightning. Beatty had this thing trying to put it through the force field. Something else was going on. Everything starts to come together.
Katniss, get away from that tree! Katniss, get away from that tree!
This sequence was a bit of a challenge. This is we shot for 2 nights here, the only real nights we actually shot in the jungle. It was pretty tricky because of opening this hole up in the dome, and this electrically charged, lightning charged arrow that pierces the dome and shorts the force field and starts to break things apart because of some kind of a pyrotechnic event. It was tricky because we needed these huge cranes that could sort of reach up over the canopy and light down, and sort of simulate the sun that's piercing through this dome and lighting the top of the canopy and breaking through the canopy and coming down onto the jungle floor. And we had rain issues and wind issues, and the crane ended up breaking down and was stuck in the jungle for about 3.5 weeks and all kinds of weather. But finally, we sort of made it back out after the new year. And
we had to wrap. I mean, we had planned to wrap before Christmas, and we wrapped, but we didn't have this sequence, so we had to go back.
There's one small, change here from the way it's written in the book. I think it's written that you see stars outside of the dome, and I just felt that sunlight pouring into this dark arena would feel more like freedom and feel more like breaking free than just a moonlit, starlit sky. So instead of dark against dark. Now you notice the aspect ratio change. We go back to widescreen anamorphic once we're out of the games. Here you can see Jeffrey, his little finger twitching, his chin twitching, just these small, teeny little things showing that there's some nerve damage in his back. This was fun to do, and it was one of these weird scenes where you shoot this, I don't know, 5 or 6 weeks into a shoot, but long before we go to Hawaii, so long before we've actually done the majority of the story, and shoot the end so quickly.
Obviously, a huge surprise for her to find Haymitch and Plutarch.
You in a syringe against the Capitol. See, this is why no one lets you make the plan.
What the hell are you doing?
Stop.
Feeling very betrayed by Haymitch and his promise to help save PETA, questioning who your allies are and who your enemies are, and to see them all seemingly mixed together. It's all a bit too much to handle.
We made the decision to really explain 13 in the next movie. It sort of has a mythical status. It's mentioned in the beginning by Snow, and we've decided that most of the storytelling around District 13 we would save for the movie that takes place there.
So something about the scene that I'm really happy about is the final shot of the movie and of this scene. And there was something that, originally scripted. It was basically, it was scripted that Katniss breaks down at hearing the news of District 12. And we did a bunch of takes of that. And then there was one take where Jen just kind of did something. She improvised and sort of was breaking down, and then the sadness started to go away and she started to get angry. And I thought it was a really, really interesting choice and a great way to kind of propel us into the feeling for the next movie.
And to really watch her become the Mockingjay.
And so when I saw that performance, we started playing with that more, and then I brought the camera overhead for this final shot to see that kind of transformation. New logo that changes, the Catching Fire logo that changes into the Mockingjay logo, sort of a reveal at the end of the film. But thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Me too.